Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've all got your pick and mix for the post-lunch lull, energy lull, but hopefully we can pick that back up straight away here. But thanks to Adweek Europe for having us. I'm Lee Cutter. I'm Vice President of Sales for Hivestack. We are the market-leading full-stack platform in the programmatic digital out-of-home space. Within this ecosystem, you need three main components, which are demand, supply, and data. And it's good to see how many partners are here today in that space, and hopefully new partners as well. But we're joined with three of our current partners here today. So we have Alys Donnelly, who is Head of Programmatic for Kinetic, which is Group M's out-of-home specialist agency. Richard Bond, on the end, who is our Managing Director at Clear Channel UK, one of the UK's leading out-of-home media owners, really championing the digitalisation of the channel. And finally, Ben Wilkins as well here, Product Director at Skyrise, who is one of the new digital-first emerging partners in the ecosystem. Thanks for your time, guys. So Hivestack, we launched in EMEA in March 2020, which wasn't great timing, as you can imagine. But across this time, we've built fantastic partnerships, again across supply, demand, and data. And we've really pushed the sector forward, I think. And again, thanks for your support and bravery in these times. I'm keen to learn more about your journey, panel, and experiences so far in the world of digital out-of-home from a programmatic point of view. Alys, given that Group M have really pioneered in this space, I'll let you go first, and I'll take a seat.
Perfect, thanks so much. It's really been a roller coaster, I think, and a lot of things gained traction just before the pandemic, kind of as you mentioned, and then we had this period of time. And it was a period when a lot of folks really took an opportunity to almost step back and think around, okay, what can we do, what should we do? How could the future be a little bit different as we're being challenged in all sorts of different ways? And programmatic out of home seemed to emerge a little bit from that pace. And it's really been, I think for me, a story around bringing together the best of what we've learnt from the digital space, all those skills, all those principles, and bringing together the best of what out of home has, this giant trusted canvas, lots of creative opportunities, lots of expertise, and melding them together with data. So it's been really the meeting in the middle of those two things, I think.
Yeah.
Lots of challenges, lots of successes, but really kind of tapping out where these different parts of the jigsaw come together.
Yeah, makes sense, absolutely. Ben, I guess you've come from the other side of this kind of emerging, two fusing worlds here. How have you found this kind of roller coaster, as Alys put it, from more of a digital perspective?
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of the same kind of sentiments, really, because I think coming from a programmatic background, we're very used to a lot of control, access, and kind of effective measurement. But I think that needs to be reevaluated. And I think programmatic out of home coming into this space, including alongside other channels like CTV that are come from a traditional heritage, come from a traditional background. They understand identity of audiences in a very different way to other channels, and they've been measured in different ways in the past. Has actually led us to sort of understand what's really valuable about programmatic, but also reassess some of the things that we maybe could have done differently or should do differently moving forwards. So yeah. It's exciting for us because it's been quite transformative for us as a business to reevaluate kind of the whole thing, the whole programmatic piece, with out of home at the core of that.
Great, interesting. Now, Richard, I guess we had a panel earlier where we heard about the evil C word, and obviously we launched our business in March 2020. How did you find it from a media owner perspective, obviously just as the sector is really emerging? How's your journey been?
Yeah, so I think I always start with my own personal journey, which is I chose to be in outdoor advertising. And the reason I chose outdoor advertising was this beautiful idea that there is no content. It's all about infrastructure and media. No media without the infrastructure, no infrastructure without the media. And I always think back at when I first started my journey as a 23-year-old, nearly 25 years ago or so, in London, was this idea that my boss said to me, out of home is the oldest medium, but possibly the one with the brightest future. And that always resonated with me. And I think kind of as we saw digital and data emerging in out of home, I saw it as disruptive, but I think we really saw this as a positively disruptive. And I think that's something we tried to absolutely embrace. And I think kind of COVID proved exactly that. I'm not going to lie, there were times in quarter two, quarter three of 2020 where I suddenly thought, why did I choose outdoor advertising? I probably should have gone digital. But I think, again, COVID period proved to me this idea that out of home is the oldest medium, but also the one with the brightest future. And I think today, again, having been able to attend 3 or 4 sessions so far this morning, what I've been impressed by is how many people have spoken about digital omni-channel. And when people were talked about what they were excited about, when they talked about what next, so many of them mentioned digital out of home, programmatic, and data as a way forward, which for me really reminds me that at the beginning of my journey up to today, this idea of out of home, digital out of home, and programmatic being an exciting space to be in.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I'm really proud of the heritage and the history of the out-of-home channel. And I think historically we've been really seen as a kind of broadcast channel, very much upper funnel. But I guess, for the programmatic kind of like way of approaching it has really opened up kind of mid funnel for more contextual relevance. And obviously that's what the panel we're talking about today. So Ben, I'm interested to see how you kind of impact on how you approach a brief and how you end up delivering those also.
Yeah, I mean, for us generally, it's kind of driven a sort of massive democratization of out-of-home, I think, and coming from a programmatic only perspective, seeing new brands entering the space, digital-first challenger brands we work quite a lot with, unlike the traditional big brands that have probably been the mainstay, who've seen the value, who've managed to benefit from the value of the traditional way of planning out-of-home. Obviously, they're attracted by the fact that we can be really agile. So a lot of our kind of features and benefits of how we operate is about being, keeping things of the moment, making sure they can be flexible with their budgets across channels. But the targeting piece is massive for us as well. So we launched our data product as well in March 2020. So I feel your pain.
Great.
Lots of video calls.
Yeah.
But it was a good, it was a good time for us in a sense to reevaluate again. The space was going through massive transformative change, and we took a different perspective, which was, let's think about identity from a kind of group perspective, using big data that can be agile, that can bring something new to programmatic. Because for a little while before that, we'd been going out pushing programmatic, but with the challenge of really saying what else can we bring that's new to this? How can we augment the currency and the understanding that has been developed over some time? So, yeah, our briefs involve a lot of that stuff, and I think context in general is massively important. There was a study, I think, that Clear Channel and Decoded called Moments of Truth, which showed there was like a 30% uptick in contextually driven campaigns over those that are non-contextually driven. Good. So there's obviously that was in terms of recall. So I think on the whole, it's the direction of travel that we need to go.
Good knowledge, Ben. I like that. And I guess for you, Alys, how has Group M's playbook, I guess, evolved with how you approach briefs?
Yeah, I think omnichannel is a really exciting part of a lot of what our brands and our clients are wanting to think around. How can we make bridges across different channels? How can we make life easier and more effective for our clients? What we're trying to do, and out of home can really play a lovely part in that. So it's really the programmatic flexibility gives the buy side a lot more options than it's ever had before. So we can, the simple things like up waiting, down waiting, and flight, turning stuff on and off, not new from the programmatic world of things, but new for out of home from a buyer. And being able to use that in conjunction with interesting data sets. So contextual data sets around the financial industry, around flight times, arrival times, trains, not today, it's a train strike, but having the capacity to make use of that through programmatic technologies really allows the buy side a lot more control over what's going on. We can get our clients closer to what they want, and it also allows us to align more closely with other channels, to share some of the insights that we can derive from what we're doing and share that with other channels like an audio or a connected TV, and just really get something that's a little bit more joined up, a little bit more sensible for clients trying to achieve their goals.
Great. Well, it's a really positive perspective from the buy side. So Richard, from your side, on the sell side, has this made your life easier? Has it presented its own challenges?
So for me, it always goes back to this idea of cohesive planning, and I think about deciding where does out of home fit within that digital ecosystem. And I think what's really been apparent to us is this idea that actually out of home makes the entire media ecosystem work that little bit harder. And I think we all know that out of home is brilliant at priming, but I think what we've also seen is actually out of home also helps you close that loop. And I'm going to quickly use my notes because this is being recorded, so I don't want to get my numbers wrong. But one of the little stats I really liked was this idea of point of search, which showed that mobile search made out of home were 38% more likely to lead to purchase, which I think is a stat that is pretty impressive. And another one, which is the idea of kind of real world priming, which is a piece of work JC Decoded, which showed a 36% increase in attention paid to online ads when they're primed using digital out of home, which for me really reminds us of this role that out of home has in that kind of broader ecosystem, in that omni-channel space, and really this idea that out of home makes your entire plan work harder. So this idea of dual screen future isn't about TV and mobile, it's about the small screen, the one in your pocket, and the brick screen, the out of home screen, the private screen, which is the one in your pocket, the public screen, the one on the high street.
Yeah, let's build on that actually. So I'm keen to get into some of the really cool stuff. So at Hivestack and across the market, we offer a really cool solution which includes both DCO, so dynamic creative optimization, and what we're calling DMO, so dynamic media optimization. So it's moments targeting, which takes contextual relevance to even greater heights. I think we've been guilty as an out-of-home sector of dining out too long on the fact that it's sunny. Hey, let's put an ad for an ice cream. There's so much. Weather's important, but there's so much more we can do. So, Richard, I think I'll stick with you if you're okay with that. So, do you think marketeers in the UK and across EMEA are leveraging the full potential of these advanced trigger capabilities? And are you seeing any through Clear Channel?
I think we're seeing everyone getting into that space and doing a little bit more around testing and learning, and I think that's true of programmatic, but that should be true of out of home in general. And I think you mentioned DCO, and I kind of try to amplify that word and think more about dynamic in general, dynamic planning and dynamic content. And you're right that we have talked a little bit about weather triggers, but I think we're seeing that happen more and more. I can think of an Aperol campaign that worked brilliantly. I can think of a Cristal ski campaign which was based around the snow, and I'm come from France, basically from the bottom of the Alps. Therefore, kind of snow is a big important parameter of my holiday kind of setting. But I think what we've also seen of late, and I think you've worked on a couple of these campaigns, was around events based. Cricket results, football results, and I think that's really this idea of making the most of moments and really tapping into that contextual aspect. So I think, of course, weather should be, but I think it's about really asking yourself, what are the triggers in your business? What sets of data can you use in order to make your campaign work just that bit harder?
Cool. I think before Alys gives us some more Group M examples, Ben, give you an opportunity to share some of the work you've been doing in this space as well.
Yeah, thanks for the plug, Richard. I think in terms of obviously weather and those signals, I think with a lot of our clients, you're actually using data that they've got as well, and using sort of store or site level data, availability level data, sales level data has been a really interesting one. We did a great campaign for a potato brand, funnily enough, called Route Zero, which took category level sales data by hour across all the stores for one of the major multiples. So 450 stores, and set that up to basically trigger an upweight based around the key times when basically people walking in buying potatoes. It's an obvious idea, but starting from the store going out, we're able to build kind of point of sale demand and preference choice, but also using audience data, we can draw that journey out a little bit further as well and make it a little bit relevant, either in the preceding hours or days, or potentially into other channels as well, bridging that into residential setting. So I think there's the opportunity to be contextual in loads of different places and times and moments, beyond specifically one at a time.
Great. What I love about this job is you're always learning. So I've never heard of carbohydrate triggers before, but it's good to know they're out there. So that's great. Alys, can you again share a few more from your world?
Yeah, and I think kind of jumping back just very briefly, I think there's a little part for all of us, kind of all of us in this room, especially all of us up here, to help our clients and help the industry understand what more we can do now. So yes, we are guilty of talking about sunshine a little bit too much. We're British, we're obsessed with it, we can't help it. But there are more interesting things we can do and are doing. Some really nifty ones which are simple but really effective. We ran for a brand that's wanted to encourage use of trains rather than private cars going to the airport. So let's look at when all the planes are landing and help encourage people to get on the train as they're leaving, or remind them that that's an option. But the first party piece is also really interesting. I think what's one of the really exciting things is that clients are really beginning to understand what they're sitting on, and understand that one of the really lovely bits about out of home is we don't necessarily need a very large, challenging live ramp style integration. We can do simple and elegant and effective things that will help them get where they need to go, but without having to delve into the world of cookies, which one of the benefits of out of home, we don't have to play in that sandbox. So for M&S, we were looking at understanding their stock level data, integration into their systems, what levels of stock do we have for certain products, then tailoring creative so that when you're on the street, you know if that's in your local store. So when you're showing those ads to the right audience in proximity to their flagship stores, you're getting this really lovely layering of data that makes what you're actually delivering really relevant to the person on the street where they can actually use that.
Great. Well, I think unlike the trains today, certainly the space is moving at a really fast pace like that. Sorry. But obviously with all these extra layers and sophistication, there is a value add and we have to justify that. We have to prove the business, kind of real business outcomes there. So Ben, I'll go to you again, I think. But can you tell me your experience and recommendations, perhaps, for marketeers in this space when we need to show and justify that value add?
I think it, a bit like I was talking at the start, I think this is a space we need to be a bit careful from a programmatic point of view. We certainly think so. Digital and programmatic over the years has been very, as a medium, very successful based on the fact that we can attribute and track and click and follow. Thankfully, we can't do that in the out-of-home space, and I think that's a good thing because quite often we've ended up counting cookies, basically drawing a picture of what happened rather than influencing what happened, and just valuing the last thing that happened rather than any of the other metrics. So we take quite a simple approach, which is starting with clients and saying, a bit like with the data piece around contextual, what data are you looking at internally? And then we'll help them either source that from their business or from external parties. And it's great if that data can include some version of geo, time, and ideally like a measure of market or competitor benchmarking, then you can do a lot of just really powerful geo experiments with that. So test control, will run here, run not there, and coordinate all of your channels around that. If I may, like a quick example of where we've done that really well was with Purple Bricks, the online estate agent. We ran a 3-channel campaign, out-of-home CTV and audio. It was actually a programmatic versus sort of linear or non-programmatic test, a dynamic creative as well. So they sort of tailored the ad based on the location and the presence of properties in that area. And we measured the incremental uplift in web and app traffic, but also incremental instructions going on Rightmove. So both of those metrics we saw great, double-digit growth versus the linear. But aside from here to bash linear, I think linear's got a great heritage and should be measured in a similar kind of way.
Yeah.
I think the point is it's just not getting sucked into that digital.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're probably now bringing more metrics from digital space into the out-of-home sector, which is great. Alice, is there any examples you can share of kind of measurement and how that's working?
Yeah, I think there are some really simple and effective things we can do. So we ran a campaign for Kikkoman, everyone's favourite soy sauce, and working with sales uplift data from local supermarkets, we saw a really nice spike for around 16% over the campaign period. And similarly, lots of footfall studies, loads of them out there, but a really lovely one for Virgin Active, coming out of a slightly difficult period for them. We saw an uplift around 16-18% with that campaign, which was great as well.
Wow.
So they're really, I think one of the nice things we're trying to get towards is, real world business outcomes for these clients, trying to get them where they want to go.
Yeah, great. And it's great to hear so many different sectors as well there. I'm actually just going to skip to the kind of penultimate question, Richard, for you. I think we all agree that the future is looking bright for programmatic digital out of home. We're seeing a lot of growth, which is fantastic in terms of revenue, in terms of partners, in terms of conversations. What excites you most about this in 2023 and beyond?
I think we're in that place where we have done a fair bit of testing then. I think we're now in a place where we can start asking ourselves big question. And for me, there's always 2 questions we go back to, which is, where does digital out of home fit within the digital ecosystem? And I think for anyone in the out of home space, it's around this idea of where does programmatic fit within the out of home kind of buying ecosystem and so on and so forth, which I think are 2 really good and important questions. And I always go back to this idea of we're lucky, out of home at a macro level is trending upwardly, and therefore we have this real chance of bringing to life this idea of the oldest medium, yet the one with the brightest future.
Great. And Ben, in your crystal ball, what are you projecting?
Well, I mean, for us, again, it's a bit of a new dawn for programmatic. That's the piece that we're focusing on. So not just out of home, but like for our space and what we consider. So again, doing away with this idea of, well, basically we're here to respect user privacy, measure real outcomes, all the themes that we've been talking about today. There's a couple of key and exciting things on our roadmap around trying to use our data to build more reach optimized plans, really focusing on that metric and bringing that into programmatic out of home. It's quite a challenge with lots of more bespoke and tailored audiences. and also trying to understand the difference between sort of regular patterns of movement and sort of like surge events, if you like. So, you know, we know the data that's used to plan is around what people do in their commute and their daily patterns. But, you know, in the last week or two, there have been hundreds of different events where actually there'll be loads more value for an advertiser, or a particular audience is seen at a particular place. If we could detect that and make use of it, I think there's a real powerful use case in there.
Right. This is a bad example of how mobile works with out of home, for sure. Converging technology is not always great. But thank you anyway, Ben. Appreciate that. And Alys, again, final for that question as well. What are you looking for the future?
I think the thing that really excites me is what we've not really done yet. So I think there are a lot of really fearless brands and clients who've jumped in head first and have really taken the bull by the horns, who are using that first-party data, using third-party data, and really going for it. I think what's really exciting me is bringing everyone else with us. So what can wider clients do? How can they make use of what we've already learned and are really making great strides with?
Great, thank you very much. And I'm going to ask a kind of quick fire round. I think we've got some time here. What one piece of advice, or I'll give you even a couple of pieces of advice, we've got some time, which is great, would you give to a client or a business or any kind of partner in this space thinking about jumping in? Because we always say getting started is the hardest part. We had a lot of partners who are joining and enjoying the party, but there are some who are still kind of like looking both ways and wondering when to come in. So what would you say from your experience as that one bit of advice? Alys, why not?
It's been said a few times, but test and learn, always true. I think it's really kind of having open conversations with lots of different parts of the ecosystem, you know, find out what's going to work for you, but also reflecting on what that client or that brand has. What can you bring to the table that might make your activation different? What's going to really work for you? I think where we've seen this work really nicely is where clients have quite a clear understanding of what they want to get out, and that can really help whoever you're working with bring something of relevance and of power to you. So, you know, understanding what you've got, understanding where you want to go, and then building everything around that.
Great, thank you. Richard, lessons for the future for us?
Well, I think not dissimilar to what Alys said, but I'd add this idea of, you know, which I would say is true about individuals, therefore should also be true about businesses, is need to learn, unlearn and relearn. And I think when I look at some of the best examples that I've seen in out-of-home, they're the best way of really showcasing where digital out-of-home fits within the kind of digital ecosystem. And I think back at a New Look campaign we ran with you guys, 95 locations, trigger-based moments, an uptake in 63% uplift in footfall, which I thought was pretty amazing, which also answers your previous question. I think the other one I really liked was this idea of Sony Pictures, you know, which is all about big brands, big launches. And you know, you would have asked me about a year ago, I would have said, well, has Programmatic out of home got a role for film launches? And I probably would have said no, but I think they found a way of making it work across 5 markets. And the idea was to actually, of course, they had their big out-of-home laydown, that big brand, that big fame, that big reach, but they also then used kind of programmatic out-of-home to work with their digital channels, looking at footprints around cinemas and then looking at bums on seats and thinking, actually, where can I try to accelerate that? So it wasn't about taking an out-of-home budget and putting it through programmatic. It's actually thinking about what are my digital strategy? How does that come to life in the real world, the world in which we operate?
Great, thanks, Bonnie. And Ben, finally to you. I guess you really have emerged again from a digital-first business into this space. So I think the audience would love to hear your advice for moving forward and getting into it.
Yeah, I'd say be audience first. Use out-of-home as the glue to join your campaign together. I mean, it works fantastically just, you know, on top of a linear, obviously as the blend, if you like, of both of those two elements, but also across other channels. And I think that's where it's, you know, for us, it's been most effective. You know, in isolation, you know, it can do a great job in an isolated way, but if you're thinking bigger, that's how I would suggest approaching it.
Fantastic. Well, look, what great panel, and also very well-disciplined panel. We've got 35 seconds to go. I don't know if we could even ask a really quick question if anyone had one. I'm not sure if we can freestyle. If not, I guess we can wrap up. Yeah, I think we're wrapping up. So thank you to the panel, and thanks to you guys for your listening. Here for questions at the end or after in the lobby if you need to speak to us.
Thank you.